हाँ जी, सभी को नमस्ते और आप सबका स्वागत है। आज लेकिन आप लोगों में से कुछ को शायद थोड़ी-सी डिसअपॉइंटमेंट हो सकती है क्योंकि सारी डिस्कशन आज इंग्लिश में होने वाली है। उसका रीज़न है कि मलिसा जी को हिंदी बहुत अच्छी नहीं आती है, वो थोड़ा बहुत समझ लेती हैं, लेकिन शी इज़ मोर कन्वर्सेंट, more comfortable when she's talking in English and when she is conversing in English. तो आज की डिस्कशन इंग्लिश में ही रहने वाली है और मुझे लगता है कि बहुत सारे लोग मेलिसा जी को ऑलरेडी जानते हैं, तो लेकिन फिर भी मुझे लगता है कि कुछ लोग ऐसे होंगे जो नहीं जानते, तो उनके लिए मुझे इंट्रोडक्शन देना है। सबसे पहली चीज़ जो स्ट्राइक करती है कि वो साइंस बैकग्राउंड से हैं और उन्होंने जो पीएचडी की है अपनी, दैट इज़ इन स्टैटिस्टिक्स एप्लाइड टू मेडिकल इमेजिंग। अब ये मेरे लिए बिल्कुल नई चीज़ है और आज की डिस्कशन में तो हम इसके बारे में नहीं पूछ पाएँगे, लेकिन मैं ज़रूर इसके बारे में जानना चाहूँगा। और अपनी एक अवार्ड विनिंग कंपनी चलाती हैं वो, मेडिकल टेक्नोलॉजीज़ पर आधारित कंपनी है जिसे वो रन कर रही हैं और इससे ज़्यादा समय नहीं लूँगा मैं, पहले उन्हें हम अपने साथ जोड़ते हैं। नमस्ते मेलिसा जी, वेलकम।
Namaste, Neeraj ji. Dhanyavad, dhanyavad. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I feel very honored.
जी। इससे पहले बिफोर आई इनवाइट काली जी इन आवर डिस्कशन, I would request you to just answer one very small question. When we just before starting this broadcast, we were discussing about that it's been about 5.5 years when you started learning about Sanatan Dharma, and you've been brought up as a Protestant or a Catholic.
That's the very first good question, because there was a split in my family along those lines, because my father's side is Polish, so Catholic, and my mother's side is Scandinavian, so is Protestant. So actually I was christened Catholic, but then went to a Protestant school. So a bit of both, I guess.
Okay. And now, when you decided to take this plunge into Sanatan Dharma, was it a conscious decision after studying something about it, or you just went with the flow?
Definitely just went with the flow. So before meeting my husband, I knew absolutely nothing about Sanatana Dharma. I can't emphasize that enough. So at school, Hinduism, we didn't learn about Hinduism. I barely even knew that it was a religion or what it was. So then meeting my husband and then just joining in with some of the family festivals, celebrating Diwali for the first time before marriage, and just absolutely falling in love with the color, with all of the excitement around the festival. So on a very superficial level, I completely fell in love with Hinduism. And then it was through my Vedic Vivah Sanskar, being part of such a beautiful ceremony, and then taking more and more of an interest in coming to India and learning about Hinduism through my own way, which was at first reading the Amar Chitrakatha comics, very sort of accessible beginner's guide almost to the Shastras, to the history of India. And from then on, just organically wanting to know more and more and more, choosing to listen to lectures, YouTube videos at night on Vedanta, and seeing how it was changing my attitude to life, my mindset, the way I saw the world, saw my existence, and realizing the benefits that for me, it just felt so effortless to keep wanting to know more and more and more, so that now I'm at the point of actually trying to read some of the Shastras myself. It's taken me a few years to feel the confidence to do so, but I am now at that point.
Okay, that's wonderful. On that note, let me bring in Kalidasi ji also in our discussion. Namaste ji.
नमस्ते, जय काली
जी। कालिदासी जी, अब हमारे दर्शक आपको जानते हैं, तो इसलिए आपकी कोई इंट्रोडक्शन की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ेगी हमें। लेकिन जस्ट नाउ जब आई वाज़ टॉकिंग टू मेलिसा जी, शी हैज़ फॉलोड एन एंटायरली डिफरेंट पाथ if we compare it with your path. And something which is very striking in Melissa's story is that she's saying that initially it was on a very superficial level. So I take it that it was the aspect of rituals, because they are so colorful and so vibrant. That is what initially drew her into Hinduism or Sanatan Dharma, although it may be on a superficial level. But what is striking, unfortunately, what is striking is that it is this ritualistic part in our country which most of the people say that this is something which is a drawback of Hinduism, that it has so many rituals. So I find it very ironic that here we have somebody who was not born and brought up in these traditions, in these rituals, and the person sees and immediately feels encouraged to learn more about it because of the vibrancy, because of the colorful environment that we have over here. So it is something like that we are not able to appreciate what we have got with us, and here is somebody who, looking from outside, felt attracted towards it and took the full leap into it. So how do you see this? I mean, this is something which is very, what should I say, surprising.
Neeraj, I personally feel that it must have been quite a phenomenal journey for Melissa to, come out from that colorless, mundane world into something which is so vibrant, something that is sparkling, something that is bright, colorful. So I think it would have been a very great reset for Melissa Ji, because,
इको आ रही है साइड से,
I'm
इको आ रही
sorry,
है, इको आ रही है थोड़ी सी.
I'm not on headphones or anything.
अच्छा, चलिए करिए, कंटिन्यू कीजिए.
So I really got inspired since the time I saw English Behan on Twitter, and then looking at her videos, and she's so expressive, she's full of life, and I'm sure she's a better version of herself now than compared to what she was before. I would like to apologize if it offends Melissa, but I think that he is a vibrant and a radiant person, amplified to the power of infinity now, after coming into the folds of Sanatan and, embracing that femininity within. Because this femininity thing, it is in shackles when you talk about Islam and Christianity, because as per them, the big sky daddy on the seventh heaven is a man, and there is no space for women.
आपके ये इको आ रही है, या तो दो टैब तो नहीं खुले, नहीं चेक कर लीजिए आप, बहुत इको आ रहा है. इन द मीन टाइम मैं मनीषा जी से थोड़ा बात करता हूँ.
Yes.
Do you agree with what Kalidasi is saying, that now you are a more radiant person as compared to what you were earlier? Because we don't know what you were earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. So I must admit, like, me before meeting my husband was still a happy person, a very fulfilled person. But it was then realizing that there's this whole other, almost like new dimension to life that is possible that I didn't even realize existed before. Because I was always a very confident person before, but now I've got a whole new level of confidence, because I've learned how Hindus are so brave. They will go to the absolute end of the world to protect karma. If you read the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, they're so inspiring as to the lengths you must go, the things you must do to protect dharma. And there are so many examples of inspiring Hindu people, but even Hindu women particularly, Jhansi Ki Rani, Rani Durgavati, Ahilyabai, Holkar, you could just go list them on and on and on. Whereas when you look at the Western history, there aren't really any female role models for young girls to look up at. So all they have to look up at are modern day celebrities, really. And it's in this point of time now in the West, where people are women are either going super, super feminine, but in a very sort of superficial way, so that they are completely undermining their intellect, undermining their opportunities for success, for being, having success, whereas, and making an impact on the world in a positive way. Or the other extreme is they completely reject femininity. And I think I was falling into that second camp before, looking back now, where because women were so oppressed in the West for so many centuries, the pendulum has swung the complete opposite way now, so that women are saying, well, I don't want to have anything to do with being female, so that I have a fighting chance against the men in their sphere of work. So I was very much in that ballpark, and it's why I chose to study science and technology, not because I was particularly good at it. I was actually, quite a well-rounded student, so I was good at lots of different things, including art and dance and many things, but I ended up choosing science and technology because I felt I was channeled down that road by my school, because that is the way for women to be the movers and shakers of the future, is to go into the men's sphere, even though obviously science and technology aren't just for men, obviously, but in the West, it's become that way, that, science and technology are for men and the arts are for women. But that's just, again, coming from the fact that in the West, they see gender as being this binary phenomenon. That if as a woman, you have to be meek and mild, or as a man, you have to be strong and courageous. And there's like a big gap or chasm between the two. And that's so unhealthy, because actually women, they have to be brave and courageous at times, and men have to be calm and nurturing at times. So it's completely unhealthy and unnatural, the way that gender is expressed and understood in the West. And yet in Bharat, when you look at Shakti, she is celebrated in such a variety of forms, from Ma Shailaputri in that very caring motherly form, all the way through to Ma Kali in her fierce warrioress form, where actually, yes, she looks fierce, but at the same time, I understand that people see her as actually the most caring form of Shakti, because she will go to the end of the world to protect, with her fierceness, with her almost with her wild nature. She can throw away any inhibitions she has to protect Dharma, to protect the righteousness, to protect children and good people. So in many ways, she's the most caring form of Shakti. So it's just so amazing to see all these different characteristics celebrated in such a diverse way, and there's none of this binary way of looking at the world and binary way of looking at genders.
Yeah, very nicely put. Kalidasi ji, now this is very interesting. Once again, see what happens, that when we talk to, even when I used to talk to my students, and especially girls, there was this idea ingrained in their mind that we are talking of a patriarchal society. Now, which is in exact opposite to how Melissa has observed it. Now, that again emphasizes the point, or maybe reinforces the point, that there is something terribly wrong with the way our kids are being brought up, or the entire narrative which has been created. Now, how do you think about this? I mean, somebody coming from Europe, and she is able to see this intertwining of the male and female, of the Shakti which is being worshipped in our scriptures. And yet we have a predominant narrative which talks that India is a patriarchal society.
Neeraj, I personally see that it is, all of this concept has been inherited by the West. So, if you see our ancient scriptures, or if you see our Dharma and the Shastra and Puranas, women are not portrayed as that, submissive, small, little, cute little puppy. They are fierce. They are strong. They can do anything. They can dethrone anyone with their resilience, with their power, with their focus, and with their determination. So I personally couldn't ever buy this. Whenever, like, I used to see fellow Hindu neighbor or anyone that I used to come across in a miserable situation, and then I used to say, God damn, you have got babies in your house with garlands around, and look at her. She's so powerful. Why can't you imbibe those qualities inside of yourself rather than leading a life which is, I mean, in such a pathetic condition? And then they used to say that we have been taught that women deserve to stay in the house, women deserve to be ultra feminine. They are the mothers, they are the sisters. I mean, all of that stereotypical notions, and men have to handle the outside world. So women is primarily only concentrated in the house. Whereas if you look back at the scriptures, we had these rishis and then rishikas. We have devis, we have devtas. And I mean, millions and millions of consorts and manifestations that we have that came down onto the planet to balance the evil. So, I mean, I think the most important thing that went wrong was that the Western and the Islamic invasion, and that is how they distorted. Once the distortion was established, I think the generation it just passed on. We lost it, though we have the idols at home, but we really don't know the true meaning. We have
Hmm.
a picture at home with all everything in his all hands, and if you see Kali and if you see all the gods, they have these weapons also. But we started seeing it in a different way. We started seeing it as someone who can give us a boon, someone who can actually fulfill our desires. And we actually did not connect well with the gods and the goddesses and the devi and the devtas, whatever you call it. So
Hmm.
the true essence was lost with all these invasions. And I think that was the time or point where Sanatan Dharma started. People started following it as Hinduism and all that thing. I think that's how the religion came out. Because according to me, religion is a very man-made concept to control religion, politics, whatever you call it. It's all purely
Hmm.
control-based establishments. So I
Hmm.
think that's how things started changing. But this is what in fact I discussed with Melissa the other evening, that we can see certain beautiful aspects about Sanatan Dharma, but why are majority of the Hindus failing to see that?
Hmm.
And that is where she pointed out, and she said it, and she said it right, that it is the ignorance, it is the conditioning, and that is the reason we have forgotten who we are.
Hmm. जी, जी. Uh, Melissa ji, it is very striking. The contrast is very stark when you said that thing. It really should shake all of us, because what is happening for last maybe 7 decades is that a narrative has been created in which the entire Bharatiya society has been portrayed to be misogynist, that the entire tradition was misogynist. Women were always suppressed over here. And in fact, I've done some work on it, that how the school textbooks are reinforcing this false narrative that our this Sanatan Dharma traditionally has been oppressive as far as women are concerned. And with mass media, or what should I say, the mainstream media has also been feeding the same wrong narrative to our generations. As a result, it is just ingrained in youngsters that we are living in a patriarchal society. Now, what the point Kalidasi was making was that since Islamic invaders started coming into our nation, the society has changed. Like there is a difference between what is theoretical and what is practical. Of course, when you are under such an enormous attack, you definitely are not going to fall back to the scriptures, and the entire society, the traditions go haywire. That is understandable. Now, what is bothering here is that even today, that same fake narrative is being peddled, and it is being lapped up by students and even their parents. Nobody is countering it. And here I see somebody who, coming from Europe, has been able to grasp this very essence of Sanatan Dharma so quickly. Now, I liked one sentence which I saw somewhere on internet, where you were saying that I felt that power of Lakshmi. So that was such a beautiful anecdote. If you don't mind, of course, it is going to be repetitive for you, but for the benefit of my audience, kindly can you repeat that for us?
Yeah, I think you're referring, thank you, G. I think what you're referring to is, so when I was getting married to my husband actually was out of a job at that time, and he was applying for different jobs. And I remember once he secured a job, I remember my in-laws almost like applauding me for him having got the job. And I remember thinking, but he got the job. He went to the interview. He got the job because of his CV, his experience and everything. Why are you saying congratulations to me? They said, well, because you're the new Lakshmi in the house. It just so happened that soon after you entered the home as his wife, he secured this really amazing job. And I thought, wow, I'd never realized that I had this, it's almost like this unknown ability to influence not only my husband, but the wealth and the happiness and the prosperity of this whole house, of my in-laws as well, because obviously they felt that prosperity of us now having, my husband having this job, it would sort of spill over to their household as well. So the prosperity was due to my influence as the Lakshmi in the house. Whereas before, I would have thought, well, the only way really I helped him is, yes, I actually helped him to create his PowerPoint presentation for the interview. So that was my contribution, but that's such a narrow-minded way of looking at my contribution. Yes, I am the Lakshmi of the house. It made me so happy to hear that.
Yeah. Now, see, what happens is, when I used to be an atheist earlier, and I used to be a communist also. So I disliked all these references which used to glorify any aspect, whether feminine or masculine.
Yeah.
And now, but there was this trend that I observed from very early on, that when a baby used to be born, and if it was a girl, then the usual phrase used to be, "Congratulations, you got Lakshmi in your house." So I used to feel irritated with that. That is something which I'm confessing in front of all of you. And I used to think that these people are so hypocrites that they are saying Lakshmi aayi hai, whereas there is nothing special about it. It was much, much later that I learned about these nuances, that when a baby is born or when a bride enters a household, that changes the entire aura, the entire I'm not able to collect the term for that. It just changes entire surroundings of the house. Not even surroundings, within the house there are changes which of course are not tangible or visible to a human eye, but they are there. And perhaps when they are saying that a Lakshmi has been born, that is what they are referring to, and that is exactly what your experience also reflects.
Absolutely.
And now, when we talk about Bible and Sanatan Dharma, on one end of the spectrum, we are saying women, or we are labeling women as a temptress. And we are saying that she is responsible for the original sin, and that is why there is so much of turbulence or so much of trouble in the world, and God had to send his only son to get the general population rid of this original sin. So, which is again, the contrast could not have been starker, that on one direction you are being labeled as temptress, and then you come back to somewhere where you are being hailed as Lakshmi. So, how do you reflect on this?
Yes, so when I look at how the Christians view women, I mean, the most obvious thing is that it's only a man who is God, and he sends his son to the earth to save the people. And yes, there are some women mentioned in the Bible, but none of them are very inspiring. There's nothing to create a role model out of. So when it comes to women becoming, being seen as a temptress, I think the idea is that you're wanting to create fear in people's minds. You're wanting to, because ultimately that's how the church was able to have such control over people, that it created fear. So, and it put certain types of people down, it divided people within families. So it was just creating a lot of sort of distrust and disharmony between people. And so I think, portraying the idea of women as temptresses, it's there as an idea to keep women subservient to men, because they can then get away with always being suspicious about what their wives are up to, for example. And at the same time, it puts shame into women, that their natural state is to be a temptress. So they are then self-suppressing themselves, self-oppressing themselves. So in many ways, it's fulfilling this role of creating disharmony, of creating distrust, of a way to manipulate people so that the church can then sit on top of all of these murmurings going on underneath within people's own lives, where they're feeling fearful or shameful or whatever. The church can sit on top of that and be the ones who feel like they're showing the path, to light. So it puts them in a position of authority to rule and to conquer over people's lives, because that is how the church works. It's through fear. And I'm sure Kalidasi ji, she would completely agree with this idea of the Abrahamic faiths ruling through fear and through keeping people stupid and having no empowerment and all of these very negative characteristics.
Ji, Kalidasi ji.
Neeraj ji, I mean, what I personally feel with experience and whatever I saw growing up in a Muslim family, first thing is that women's are objectified in a very different way, and women's don't have much of liberty apart from having a black shroud, being packed in a black box, and there is a set of do's and don'ts that they are imposed with. And as how Melissa ji said, I think all of these things, like women being a temperess, in Islam they say women's are temperess as well as they say that they are sinful creatures and they are half brained. I mean, like, so in short, I would say that women's are considered to be a humanoid figure who doesn't have brains, who has the reproductive capability, who has the capability of providing pleasure to multiple people, and that is it. So this is what women is, and that is how women are projected in Islam. And Melissa ji really explained it very well, how it is being seen in Christianity. So I think women's have more of power, understanding, and if in the first place they wouldn't have had divided these binary, or they wouldn't have had introduced this binary system of gender, one being weak and fragile, and one being strong and very staunch and very fierce. So I think if you see the concept of their Abrahamic religion, it's all man based. So Allah was a man, God is a man, and he sent his son. So I think I think these all started, I mean, some of these intelligent beings who were there in that time, they definitely plotted to establish control. And in order to establish control and introduce and maneuver their concepts of Allah and God, they had to discard women. Because if women were also considered equal, they would have had to come up with something which was a feminine version of Allah, or the feminine version, the wife of God. So the son was there, but the mother is missing, and Allah is there, a man who's a creator. So they actually copied quite a lot of concepts and these philosophies and these ancient knowledge, and they took it in a cauldron, and they put in their ideas and they cooked it up. And that's how two of the beautiful dishes came. One was Islam and one was Christianity, where women's are a second class citizen, and it is only men, men, men. And I think that is how this entire disease started from the West and from the Arabia, and it just migrated with invasion and everything, and we acquired it, like our ancestors, like my grandpa and his great grandfather, they acquired this disease, and with generation it is being passed on. So we were made to believe that we are dumb creatures. We were made to believe as a woman that we just deserve to be in the house. We deserve to be ultra smooth, ultra soft, ultra delicate, fragile like a rose petal. I really don't know. This is like a very catastrophic psychologically if a child is raised with such understandings. And I mean, if you see, now women's are progressive, and mostly they are progressive in the wrong way. So if we, study deeply our dharma and our scriptures and the portrayal of the energies and the shaktis and the devis, so they were quite intelligent. They were motherly, as how Melissa also mentioned. They were motherly as well as they were fierce when they had to. So, I mean, for example, if my child is being threatened or my child is in some danger, I wouldn't hesitate to carry an axe and run over there and to save his life. The same thing would Melissa would do. She wouldn't do anything different. She wouldn't run to police or someone else for help. She would immediately grab something, whatever is there over the counter in the kitchen, and she's gonna make a move, and she's gonna, rescue her child. So these are the different aspects of being a woman. And I think, these Das Mahavidyas, if you see, the Nav Durgas, if you see, they actually represent these aspects of femininity. And femininity is not something which can be boxed or caged. Femininity is creationism, and creationism is, life. And that's how we all are here. So I think both the genders stand equal. And I mean, Islam and Christianity, I mean, I really find their theories to be very obnoxious.
Ji. Melissa ji, I don't know whether you are aware or not. There is a word Aurat which is used for women. Have you heard about this? Do you know the meaning?
I have. In fact, in my my very first Hindi vocabulary book, Aurat is there for owl. Yeah, as the word to go with the letter.
But
yeah.
now you will be surprised to know that it is an Arabic word, and actually it means the genitalia of a woman.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
So that is the level to which we have fallen. That even we are teaching our kids those words which have such shameful connotations, and that is probably what Kalidasi was referring to when she said that after the invasion we've just lost our collective minds. Look at this. Look at this word. This single word tells you the kind of socio-cultural atmosphere or the socio-cultural milieu from which it originated, where women had this only purpose, and they started calling her by that name. And unfortunately, we in Bharat have also latched on to that word, and we are using that for women. I mean, there could be. I find it very sad that this is what is actually happening, and that is actually why I put that caption from Aurat to this, the journey from Aurat to this. So I think Kalidasi ji can more visualize that how women are being perceived in Islamic society, and what change she has observed or witnessed when she is switched over to something else. Okay, now my next question is first to Melissa ji. When we talk of somebody coming from Islam, like for example, Kalidasi is coming to Sanatan Dharma, she's taking a very big risk. The risk of physical assault, the risk of being physically eliminated, the risk of being ostracized from the society, the risk of being labeled as a whore, and many, many other things. But the same stigma is not attached with somebody coming from where you are coming from. So that is one difference that somebody can notice. But tell me something: is Was your transformation, was your change accepted very with open hands, open mind, or was there some kind of resistance somewhere?
Very good question, G. So I guess there are different levels on which I have relationships, and the extent to which there has been a change in those relationships as a result of me first marrying my husband, a Hindu, and then becoming a Hindu myself. So if I focus first on my most immediate family, so because my upbringing was relatively mild when it comes to Christianity, we'd go to church maybe once every 2 months. Even though I was in a church primary school, it was by no means fanatic. Our focus really growing up was on doing well in school, doing well in sports, doing well in our careers. So my parents were not actually too bothered, to be very frank. There were a few, I guess, misconceptions that I had to, and my husband as well, had to help to clear up. Because obviously when you are living in the West and the only thing you know about Hinduism is what you read in the newspapers, you get, you build up some misconceptions when it comes to the caste system, when it comes to, again, women and these things. But with an explanation from us, they were fine with it. So that's all it took, an explanation. But there were others, within, for example, my paternal grandmother, who did have an issue. So she's a staunch Catholic, and she had an issue with me marrying a Hindu. She said she wanted nothing more to do with me when I told her we got engaged. But the thing is, to be honest, I wasn't too upset about it, because she's had an issue with so many different marriages within the Christian family. If they've married a Catholic or a Protestant or an evangelical or whatever, she's then become estranged from some of her other children, between her children. So my aunts and uncles, there's a big chasm between who talks to whom based on down different Christian lines. So she estranged me on that basis, but she estranged others within Christianity. So there you go. Now, when I look at my school friends, it did create a bit of tension for some of them, because when we were growing up, none of us were very strong Christians. There were a few who were maybe slightly more. But what happened is at university, they got really sucked in to some of the very strong churches at Oxford University, Cambridge University, because we were all high achievers within my friendship group. So we ended up at these very high-ranking universities, and then they were targeted, perhaps because they were feeling a lot of stress, and so they were finding sort of respite in going to a church and people who would listen to them. The next thing you know, they are completely radicalized, and they are helping to organize missionary journeys to India and elsewhere, Africa, for example. So now, as an adult, some of those relationships are a bit tense. Like when I, a few years ago, went to one of their weddings, and you're hearing the priest praise them for their missionary work. It makes me feel very terrible just to be sitting in there and want to like shout out at them and just run out of the church. So yeah, on a friendship level, it's made things difficult. And then as I'm forming new friendships, it's also quite a isolating experience being a Hindu, particularly because we live outside of the cities in the UK. We live in the countryside, and basically the whole population here is white British. When you look at the school, the demographics, it's 100% white British. I've never seen a Hindu or a Muslim around here, not for another probably 8-10 miles until you get to the next town. So when it comes to forming new friendships, it can be quite difficult, because the only social groups that there are in the villages here are based around the church, really. So the only way that when we moved to this new village, the way that I could make friends was basically to join the elderly women's group, because that was the least church-based group there was. So I was the youngest in the group by about 40 years. I had no alternative. It was that or a church group, and I definitely wasn't joining that. So in that way, it can be quite isolating to be a Hindu, because they are so unaccepting of us being Hindus. I mean, even in the elderly women's group, they would comment, "Oh, you've got your Christmas lights up early," and I had to correct them. No, no, they're not my Christmas lights; they're my Diwali lights. And you know, there would just be a few snark comments made, nothing too terrible, but enough to make you feel uneasy and maybe think about whether you want to come again. So there is that low-level discrimination being a Hindu, certainly. Now, when I look at the social media level, you know, I quite often get attacks from Christians, particularly. So that's why on Facebook, I never stay logged in for too long, because I can just, you see the messages building up and I don't really want to look at them. But at the same time, when it comes to social media, you know, I can choose what I look at and how much I allow it to absorb into me and to affect me. And as a Hindu, because I am, you know, I have found this new strength, this new courage, and this such clarity of understanding of what is right and what is wrong, and such confidence in who I am, even when I do see these messages, generally they don't impact on me at all. Whereas before, when I think of old Melissa, if I ever received any criticism or anything, I would have been, you know, really shaken. So that's another way in which Hinduism has really benefited me, is that it's given me the courage, the strength to fight against all the discrimination that as Hindus we face on a daily basis.
Okay, so that's great. But something very interesting that comes up in your discussion is, you said that these bright girls, they were targeted. That is a very strong word to use.
Yeah.
Were
I
they
mean,
actually...
I experienced it myself even. So in my undergraduate degree at Imperial, I remember sitting in the library, and a few times, not just on one occasion, 2 or 3 times, sitting in the library just doing my work, someone would sit next to you, they'd strike up a conversation. Before you know it, they put like a cartoon from the Bible in front of you, and they start trying to draw you in and ask you big questions. And I could see it happening. So each time, back then, I was just very polite and said, "Oh, sorry, not interested, thank you very much." You know, that happened certainly at Imperial, and then again at Oxford. But particularly, I think because by that time I was a postgraduate, so I was a bit sort of sheltered away. People couldn't get at you so publicly then. It maybe wasn't such an issue. Whereas those friends of mine who were undergraduates at Oxford, as I've just described, they became very radicalized. So there's that angle, you know, the Christian missionaries trying to attack you. And I think, as far as I understand, it's particularly bad if you are a Hindu. You particularly get attacked or targeted then at the universities in the UK, because they know you're an easy target. They know that actually you're most likely to be one of these sort of neo-Hindus or a universalist Hindu, where you think all religions are the same, and you hear your parents saying that you need to respect all religions are the same. So that when it comes to the point where someone's trying to bring you into Christianity, you think to yourself, well, my parents said all religions are the same, so if I worship baby Jesus instead of Bhagwan Ram, what's the difference? You know, all religions are the same, and before you know it, they are completely converted. So there's that angle. And then the other angle for Hindus particularly is the risk of love jihad. And obviously that's a massive problem in India, but it's creeping over here very quickly. In fact, when I was at Oxford University, it was at the time where there was the grooming gang scandal just 2 miles down the road from Oxford. And it's so peculiar because I was literally living in Oxford at the time that this scandal broke, and yet I knew nothing about it. It really wasn't reported much in the media, and it's because it was so hushed up. And that's my fear, that people in the UK, they don't see the danger that is coming. And it really is a big danger now, not just in, you know, the big cities where there are high Muslim populations, but now even like in places like Oxford. So although where we live right now is in the countryside and we feel quite isolated from all that, it really isn't that far to the next town where that could be happening. You know, it really is a reality of today in the UK. And in the UK, they just seem completely oblivious to this. And when I quite often, because of my work, I receive notifications from the government about different like trade missions between countries, so that if you want to go to an exhibition to exhibit the products you're selling, etc. And I've received so many in the last month encouraging Pakistani companies to come to the UK and to help bring Pakistani students into the UK into internships and things. I'm just thinking, my goodness, the UK, where are you going? Where are you heading? When I compare it to France, I mean, very sadly, some terrible things have happened in France, but I think it's given them a bit of a wake-up call as to the situation that is unfolding in front of their eyes if they keep being so welcoming and so accepting and so empowering of Muslims. So yes, I really fear the track that the UK is on.
Yeah, it's a terrible trap in which they are falling. Okay. Kalidasi ji, the things that Melissa is telling, there is a new question which has cropped up in my mind. In India, what we think is, and then there is this another class of people, like we can say moderate Muslims, who are saying that if we can somehow reform Islam so that people are not becoming mujahid or jihadi, then it is okay. But listening to Melissa, what I'm finding out is that now we have this weird notion that in Europe or in America, Christianity is a very subdued, very benign form of Christianity exists over there, and people just think that it is just a book, just a religion which used to dictate our lives, but no longer it happens. So it is just a part of life which is not, which does not play a significant role in their lives. But listening to her, what I'm noticing is that even in universities, young bright girls are being targeted, and the same kind of strategies being utilized in Europe also. What is being done in India? So, how far is it correct to say that Christianity is not such a big problem, and if Islam also shift to that gear or that pattern, then Islam will also cease to be a problem? How do you see that?
Yes, Neeraj ji,
Sorry, just a minute. Sorry to interrupt you.
yes.
Melissa ji, same question will be coming to you also. Ji.
Yes, Neeraj ji, if you see, I mean, some might come up with all these notions that, Christianity has moved on in a lot of ways where they are not so strict, and they have become very lenient. Majority of them have turned atheist. Then I do get to hear all of these things, but on the contrary, then I see that an entire portion of our beloved nation is totally Christian. There are no temples. So then that question gets debunked, or that notion gets debunked, that they are not a threat. So and if you see, when it comes to Islam and when it comes to Christianity, uh, you know they have their own radical wing. They have their own extremist group. Then they have got their own individual soothsayers who are dressed in whites, and who will preach goodness and sweetness about all these things. And there is one more group, which is the biggest problematic thing that I see, is our fellow Sanatanis. So they have become the agents to these two organizations. And that is how I have never seen that Christian forced Christian conversion, or normally that they say the rice bag convert gangs and all that, mafias and everything. I have never seen them coming to a full stop. So how can we say, I mean, I can see, if you see, geographically I'm based in Bharat. So of course I would be looking outside of the window, max I would be watching it on TV. Whatever I'm traveling, I'm seeing, I'm perceiving things, and I'm understanding, and I'm getting to know things in that way. But I think first I would see what is around me, rather than going all around the world and then analyzing and deciphering things in a complete different way. So I think these two problems, these two ideologies, or whatever you call it, I mean a religion you can call it. So these two problematic religion are very, they have this capability of immediately morphing also. So at one point they might, sound and look like a demoniac entity right in front of you, and you would be scared, oh God, what has happened? And they are going to kill me. But all of a sudden they have this ability to transform into that soothsaying thing also, like an angel. So it is completely filled with conspiracy, and it is completely filled with all these, I mean, to me it looks like a nonsense, because their book says something else and people are saying something else. So people are definitely trying to defend the book, people are definitely trying to safeguard the book by under the, if they say that we are moderates or we are atheist Christians or whatsoever. See, no matter how much they try to push this word of being moderate, if you are truly a moderate, then why not discard things which is of no use? So, on the contrary, I have observed in terms of like the Islamic community, in the youth, in the early stages of life of a Muslim guy or a girl or whosoever, they have all their, worldly desires met, and they explore everything. The moment the clock is ticking and they enter the, middle age or whatever, and all of a sudden they become pious. So, and we Hindus have inherited this morphing technique from them, because I mean, when you talk about Sanatan Dharma, we have got those four, parts of life, how it needs to be spent, like the student phase and the, domestic phase and the spiritual phase or whatsoever. So we had a very systematic approach, but we have also inherited. So now I see most of the Sanatanis, only when they grow old, then they take a mala and then they do the mantra jap, and they say now we have to die and we have to become spiritual. Though it was, why, absolutely opposite in the ancient times. Even a child could travel through, I mean, like, with his or her consciousness, and they could gaze into the entire universe without any tools or without anything. So this Islam and Christianity is such a disease that has infested this planet Earth, that no matter how much vaccines you come up with, you might keep it under check for some time, but they are going to mutate. They are going to mutate on a genetic level or some other level, and they are going to again come with an outburst, and they are going to come up with a catastrophe for the society and for this planet. So there is no end, and it has already been started. Those who say that things are changing, I mean, I strongly disagree. I cannot buy this, because I can see thousands of rise back conversion happening, and I am seeing that thousands of Sanatani girls are being killed in the name of love jihad, and I am seeing lots and lots of atrocities. Temples are being, demolished, sadhus are being lynched, and states, I mean, like, entire states are becoming Christian, and temples are just vanishing overnight, and there's only church. So these things are, I think, these are like more of a media gimmick, I would say, or a media conspiracy to project a very sweet, sugar-coated picture to the outside world that things have moved on. But these two, I think, parasite cult or religion, it's very difficult to get rid of them.
Ji. Okay, Melissa ji, same question to you now.
So what is important here is that Hindus come to understand their enemies, and it's something that Hindus, for some reason, just at the moment, are terrible at doing it on so many fronts. They're not very good at analyzing their enemies, of being able to see that other people have very bad intentions for them or are thinking very bad things. They kind of like sugarcoat things way too easily. Now, when we're talking about reforming the Abrahamic faiths, we have to realize that the core tenets of these Abrahamic faiths is that unless you follow the Bible or you follow the Quran word by word, and you believe exactly in the interpretation of your particular church, and as I said before, there are so many different strands of churches, and they each think each other is damned. But in all of these cases, unless you follow those books by word, and then the books themselves say you are damned in any other occasion. and that you must convert others. That's your duty, to convert others to have that same ideology, that same dogma. And that anyone who is worshipping a murti, or anyone who does yoga asanas, or any bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, karma yoga, raja yoga, these are all sinful acts. And that will mean that you will spend the rest of eternity burning in hell. So this is the core idea within the Abrahamic faith. So the idea that you can reform them is a bit nonsensical, really, because it's the core part of the religion. And I think it's important to bring up here that I read a statistic recently that of the people who in the last UK census declared themselves as Christian, 40% of those, when probed a bit further, said, yes, I'm a Christian because I believe there is a higher power, but I don't believe anything in the Bible. So it makes you realize that they are just realizing, or they're knowing deep within themselves that there is a higher power, there is a spiritual world out there, but they just do not identify with what is described in the Bible. But all they know, all that people in the UK are aware of, are Christianity and Islam, and they know they don't want to be seen as a Muslim, so they say, well, I'm a Christian then. That's all they know. So I think in the grand scheme of things, people in the UK know that the Bible contains hate speech. It contains nonsense. They don't want to have anything to do with it, but they've got no option because they don't realize the beauty of Hinduism, of Sanatana Dharma, and the beautiful life they could have there. On a completely different note, now looking at Bharat, the situation there, what my concern is that there's a big push I can see at the moment at the political level, at some of the Hindu leader levels, at the RSS level, I can see where they're trying, I think they have the best intentions to bring Muslims and Christians back into the Hindu fold by promoting cultural Hinduism, by trying to get Christians and Muslims to take part in the Hindu festivals, to say, well, yes, I'm a Muslim, but my ancestors were Hindus, so I'm both. The thing is, that's not really achieving its aim, or if it is, it's achieving its aim for such a small handful of Muslims and Christians, because they have so many incentives to remain Muslims and Christians. And as and when they are called to fight in a potential future civil war, they are going to fight with the Christians and the Muslims because they believe in these core tenets. That is the central feature of being a Christian and a Muslim. And then the dangerous side to this idea of cultural Hinduism, universal Hinduism, is that what it is really achieving, and achieving in a very negative way, of course, is it's weakening Hindus. So Hindus are no longer really Hindus. They are beginning to think, oh, I can worship baby Jesus because, they're saying I'm culturally a Hindu, but, that someone who is a Christian can also be culturally a Hindu, and it's okay for me just to do the rituals how I want to do them and have no knowledge of the Shastras and the core tenets of Hinduism and not to be following your life that way because it's universal Hinduism. It's so relaxed and we're so accepting of people. So all it is doing is it's undermining the very people that we absolutely need to be strengthening up, because these Abrahamic forces, they are just getting stronger and stronger. They are getting more powerful, they're getting bigger in number, they're getting more money. You look at the Joshua Project, so many examples of the missionaries having so much wealth and power behind them. And it's so sad because within our family, certainly, it's causing so much discord, this idea of universal Hinduism, cultural Hinduism, because whereas I am grasping out to try and become a stronger and stronger Hindu and to live my life by Sanatana Dharma, I can see my Hindu Indian family going in the complete opposite direction, and it leads to so many clashes. And it can be on such innocuous subjects. So I mentioned recently to Kalidasi ji the example of a few weeks ago. We had an argument with my in-laws because we were saying that we would like to raise our future child learning Hindi and speaking Hindi as the first language. And my family are totally fine with that. They're really excited to be called Mamu and Choti Nani. They're so excited. But my in-laws in India, they threw up such a hoo-ha because they want to be called Granny and Granddad, not Dadi and Dada. So, and when we had this clash, the conclusion from their side was, well, we are global citizens. We care for humanity. And it was just this throwback in our face because they associate somehow in their minds, I don't understand how, that by speaking Hindi, you are not a global citizen because you prioritize India and Hinduism over the global picture, which in their mind means speaking English. And also that you are against humanity because apparently Hinduism is anti-humanity, which is just a complete nonsense. So this sort of eating away, rotting away at Hinduism from within is extremely dangerous. And then on top of that, you've got these forces from outside, from the Abrahamic faiths, from Pakistan, from China, and it's just a very scary situation when you look at the future of Bharat.
Yeah, very nicely put. And I wish we had more people who had grasped the ground reality as you have. And I'm surprised that within the last 5.5 years, you understood the entire crux of the battlefield also. And unfortunately, as you rightly mentioned, and it reflects in your own experiences, that the people living in Bharat are so oblivious to all these dangers. But surprisingly, what happens is we find that at global level, we talk of that we have so many Indians, so many Bharatiyas at such top levels. They are CEOs in Google, they are CEO in Facebook, and so on, which tells us that when it comes to their individual life, when it comes to their own material gains, their profits and losses, they're very smart at it. But when it comes to the collective level, they somehow either don't understand what is at stake, or they are just trying to shun the responsibility that somebody else is going to come and do it for us, or even if that civil war does take place, I am going to survive because maybe I'm living in America, or maybe I'll be living in some corner of the world, so I'll be safe from that. And that is something very unfortunate. And we require people like you who can somehow hammer it into the brains of people living in Bharat that this is what we are looking for if we do not rise up to the occasion right now. कालिदासी जी,
Yes.
मलिसा जी ने बहुत सुंदरता से एक्सप्लेन किया सारे का सारा, है ना. आई एम सो ग्लैड एंड आई मीन हैट्स ऑफ टू हर के उन्होंने इतने अच्छे से इसको प्रेजेंट किया है. आप स्माइल कर रही थी तब भी, तो मैं जानना चाहता हूँ क्या कह रही थी, क्या सोच रही थी.
Neeraj ji, if you see, I had my own journey and trip. She has her own journey and trip in life. But the most fascinating thing is she could also, relate to quite a lot of the essence, the truest essence of Sanatan Dharma, and which was something that she experienced. She might have had some textbooks to refer, but I think if she wouldn't have had experienced, she would not have had been talking the way how she's talking now. So books might have given her direction, books might have given her a path, but she had all the courage. She had all the, zeal within her to go out and experience it. And that is how she is who she is now. And she is speaking, so beautifully, and she is narrating things so beautifully. And, she is like an inspiration to millions, to the millions of ignorant Hindus, those who have been born in such a beautiful, culture or society, but still are failing to understand the truest essence. those who are just labeled Hindus and labeled Sanatanis, who are not, understanding and living by the truest principles. So I think Melissa ji is one of the most beautiful examples that even the youth, or you can call even the middle age, or even the old age, or whatever age, whatever gender, or whatever class and creed people belong from, they can listen to her and understand that what they had been apologetic about all this while, like nani, dadi, grandma, all those hierarchy of apologetic feeling that they have kept on imbibing and inheriting, that was all, I mean, like, useless. Because she, people like her, people like me, people like you, Neeraj, we are the examples. We might not be the best example, since we are constantly learning, improving and improvising and evolving, but we are someone who are understanding Sanatan in its true essence. And that is what we are talking about. We are letting, we are, or rather, we all have been thinking beyond the material. We have changed quite a lot. You had a very secular journey, Neeraj, and your start was that's an exclusive episode, Melissa ji. I would suggest you to watch it on my channel. Like, there is a lot of interesting things Neeraj talked about. So we all had our own journey. I had become an atheist for a very small period of time. So, but we did not stop exploring, and that is what Sanatana is. We did not stop from improving ourselves. We went on studying, we went on realizing. And you see, I mean, earlier, even, a small thing like fidget spinner, I mean, like when I was a kid, that used to make me happy. A lollipop or a chocolate would make me happy. Now, to me, it is just a change of my palate or taste buds. So, we have come so far. Earlier, a balloon used to be the entire world. The whole day I used to think of that, maybe my mom should get me a balloon, and that would make me happy. The entire day I used to think about a single balloon. And now there are so many multiple things that I'm able to see. And how am I able to do that? And that is only through understanding Sanatan Dharma. And you constantly keep rising in your awareness, in your consciousness. And I think we need more people like us. We need more people to come out of that mental prison that they have been conditioned into, that Hindu is being dogmatic, Hindu is being something which is traditional and which is very boring and not very woke and not very liberal. Oh, that's utter rubbish. You see, Kali, she doesn't care about anyone when it comes to fight the evil. She, I mean, like, she just goes beyond, I mean, anything that you can even think of. Look at Mahadev. He's silent in his meditative state, but he goes ferocious when he is being triggered. So we are way more, we have to see and start appreciating our lineage, our past, our ancestors, rather than getting influenced by West or by these Abrahamic religion. Because to be honest, I would like to share a personal experience. A couple of days back, I was speaking to one of my relatives after a very long time. We had a usual talk, and it was like, how are you, what are you doing? And then again, the entire conversation took a very interesting turn. My relative is telling me, how do you feel now that you have embraced a demon and you have become a demon worshipper? How do you feel? Don't you have any guilt that you would be barbecued in hell?
Hmm.
And it was a point where earlier I used to argue, earlier I used to answer and give reasonings. But this was the time when I disconnected the call and I put it in the block list.
Hmm.
So there are some things that will never change. So a vessel, once if it is put into that heating chamber and it solidifies a muddle, an earthen vessel, you cannot do much with it. It's there, it's taken a full shape, until unless, I mean, if it would have not been baked, you could still do some molding. And this relative of mine was around 45-year-old. So and they are in very good position, they are very rich, they have traveled the world, and they call themselves moderate Muslims. So I have personally seen the horrendous side of it, and I have seen the masked horrendous side also, and I have seen the morphed side also. So there is nothing peaceful, and Hindus should wake up. Sanatanis should wake up, and they should embrace, and they should understand. That's what, in fact, Melissa ji also said, that we all should be, aware and awaken, and with our eyes wide open, we should, actually see who our truest enemy is. This is not just religion thing or, difference of opinion. Because no matter what you say, no matter under what wing or under what situation or circumstances, a person says that, okay, fine, Hindus and Muslims can be brothers, Christians and Hindus can be brothers. No, Hindus should understand that I'm telling from a Muslim perspective and from a Muslim point of view, Hindus are considered to be demon worshippers. They are the worshippers of fire, and fire is one of the ingredients of hell. So this is a simple thing that the Hindu should understand. No matter in what skin, no matter in what masking, or you say now the wolf comes into the skin of the sheep. So that is what is happening. The wolves are all around, looking like sheeps, and Hindus are buying it. And my question is, why? How can you ignore such rich cultural lineage and heritage? And how can you get fascinated with these bullshits like Hindu Muslim bhaichara? We all are brothers and sisters. This is rubbish. I mean, either you are fooling yourself or you are fooling someone else. Melissa would actually tell us, I mean, this is what Islam sees Hindus as. My point, I mean, like behind sharing this was, this is exactly how Islam sees Hindus. So whatever people had been buying and they had been listing, that's utterly rubbish. And now I want to know, Melissa, can you, enlighten our Hindu brothers and sisters as to how Christianity sees, Hindus?
Absolutely. So a true Christian who, those other 60% who on the UK census said, yes, I'm a Christian and I believe in the Bible, they absolutely will agree that Hindus are devil worshippers, that they are damned to eternity in hell. And they will call them idol worshippers, but that is in itself such an insult, because what they mean by that is that we are superstitious, that any works of art that is Christian in nature is a work of art, whereas any object or painting from Hinduism is an idol because it is superstition. We should absolutely be using the word morti the whole time. So that is how a true Christian would see us. Now, the other 40% who I said, they maybe would tick the box, they are a Christian, but they say, well, we don't really believe in that description, the Bible, how the Bible describes God. At best, what we could hope from those types of people is that they would just find Hindus funny, cute. That's the kind of image that they have in their minds for us. Or the other one is scary. In fact, my only understanding, or the only thing I ever came to know about Hinduism when I was a child was from watching the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom film, where they portray Hindus as terrifying. Obviously, it's completely wrong, completely false. But that's stuck in my mind as a child, as that's what the people in India are like, as a sort of 7-8-year-old child. So those are the two ways in which the average person in the UK would see a Hindu. It's, if they're very Christian, that they're damned to eternity, that you can't respect them. At very best, you can just laugh at them, or you might find them a bit scary in a kind of sort of voodoo way, not like as scary as in you would want to, not want to offend them. Like with Muslims, they're genuinely scared, whereas this voodoo way or black magic kind of image that they have. That's to be scared of, but in a sort of comical way. You see what I mean? I know it's a slight juxtaposition between comedy and fear, but there is that strange relationship there. And the reason why, one of the reasons why it's allowed to continue like this is because I feel Hindus are way too apathetic about this portrayal of themselves, about the small discrimination they face on a daily basis. And I say it's small, it really isn't small, but the thing is that many Hindus, they consider it small, or that you can just ignore it, just accept it, you know, it's just part and parcel of being a Hindu, and that's just not acceptable. It really, we have to help Hindus realize this is not acceptable, and the longer and longer you allow that piece of rope to be, that you're giving them, you know, the opportunity to make fun of you and everything, that's a longer and longer rope with which they can hang you in future. And there are so many examples that I come across within the Hindu UK community of bullying and discrimination, and often actually it's Hindus themselves who say, oh no, don't make a fuss about it, oh it's fine. They're just too desperate to be accepted. They're too desperate to blend in. In fact, when I was at school, I actually had two Hindus as best friends, but I didn't realize it until I was an adult, because they had completely masked their Hindu identity and blended in so well that I didn't even know that, you know, their heritage was from India and that they were Hindus. I know it seems silly now, but as an adult, I was thinking, was it me being stupid? And it was maybe a little bit of me being a bit naive or ignorant, but it was also the fact that they just did such a good job of blending in by denying themselves their own identity, because they had fear of being bullied or to feel embarrassed about. And even today, you know, I sometimes make videos for children, and often I hear from their parents in return how they are being bullied, that they're too scared to have friends over to play, because then their friends will know that, you know, about them being Hindu. And it's just a very sad situation. So we somehow need to awaken Hindus to feel proud, to have some self-respect, because until Hindus have self-respect, no one else is going to respect us. So that is the first point. We need to do away with this mental colonization, this inferiority complex. And yes, this needs to be done on an individual level. Each Hindu themselves need to go out, see clarity in the situation and go out and seek to become proud and to learn their real history and, you know, learn the Shastras for themselves. But there are some strategic things that can also happen and that are not happening, unfortunately. So, you know, the Hindu leaders, I keep calling upon them in all my videos at the moment to appeal to them, to try and strengthen Hinduism, to strengthen Hindus, to make Hindus proud, not by saying, you know, all religions are the same and trying to appeal to a Western audience and all this, but by converting Hindus back into Hinduism and to give them the self-respect. There are just all of the Gurujis who, you know, have millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of followers. They all do this. They all put up YouTube videos praising Jesus or doing a talk about Jesus, and it's just so unnecessary. Fine, if you don't want to badmouth Christians and badmouth Christians, don't. But don't promote them. Like, just ignore them at the very best you can do. Just ignore them and just concentrate on making Hindus Hindu.
Yeah. Yes. तो दर्शकों को पता होना चाहिए कि मेरे दोनों ओर देवियां हैं. I've got Lakshmi on one side, Kalidasi on the other side, and both of them are exhorting the Sanatanis to be real Sanatanis, not just for namesake. We must understand our strength. We must know where we are coming from. Only then we'll be able to put up a resistance or put up a fight. Forget about winning. I'm just saying we can just put up a fight only then if we are self-aware, and as Melissa has very brilliantly put, that we have to be assertive instead of being apologetic and always being on back foot. And with that note, now we have a very interesting question which is addressed to both of you. The question is from a viewer, Viral Patel. He says, one of my friend's girlfriend is ex-Muslim. I often tell her about Sanatan Dharma. Last time she asked me why only women do fast for their men. How do I answer? That is the question. He's talking about the festival of Karwa Chauth, that the wife is keeping a fast for the longevity of her husband. So probably the corollary is that why is it that the male is not having having a fast for the longevity of his wife, his spouse? Anybody of you willing to take?
I would like to take.
Ji.
See, Karwa Chauth, if at all this question is referring to Karwa Chauth, so if you see, there are certain mentions in some books about this Karwa Chauth and how it happened and why it happened. So if you see all what these kind of fasts and rituals, basically first one needs to understand and identify in Sanatan Dharma or the dharmic scriptures, whether it be Vedas, Puranas, or Shastras, the rituals are basically to draw blessing. The rituals are basically to, seek a boon. The rituals are basically to invite, the Devis and the Devtas into your realm, and you can, help them bless you and improve your life. So when it comes to fasting again is an aspect, that has been depicted mostly by women, and women had been fasting for their husbands' long life. So I personally see it as that. First of all, women's are how I mean, Neeraj can help me with this word. Women's are all the time pavitra, so they don't need any purification or consecration or whatsoever. Things is not needed. Even if a woman doesn't take bath, or even if a woman comes out of somewhere or whatsoever, so the woman is very pure. So Shakti is considered to be very pure. And when the Shakti in the physical form, if she fasts for someone who is beloved, and over here, let's assume that we are talking about Karwa Chauth, so that is something which is very revered. The sacrifices or the rituals or these kind of fasts that we see, if in a broad spectrum, if you see in Sanatan Dharma, these all are rituals that helps you to connect, and that helps you to draw a specific energy. There are fasts for Ekadashi also. There are fasts for a lot of occasions and everything.
The question is stemming from that mindset, that from the radical feminist mindset, that why only women is keeping a fast for her man, why is it not the other way around? वो सिर्फ उस aspect में पूछ रहे हैं.
I think in that case, if that is truly the question, then it is a very sexist question. And I see more men and women both equal, and I see both can fast for each other. So if this thing has been fed, I mean, there is a lot of stories and a lot of things mentioned in scriptures where men have sacrificed quite a lot of things for their beloved wives. They have left their lives and they have walked on to different paths. And so I mean, if that is the question, then I would not be the right person to give a very concrete answer why women, because I see both of them to be very equal.
Okay.
And I'll just add on to that. So this kind of ties into the idea, as Kalidasi ji was saying, that actually these questions in themselves are sexist, because why shouldn't women be allowed to fast for their husbands if that's what they want to do, if that's what their energy is compelling them to do? Then allow them the privilege. In the same way, I'm probably maybe touching onto a slightly controversial subject here, but with sati, and there are so few examples of sati practice, of course we know that, but when people latch on to sati from the scriptures, they latch onto it because it's a woman who chooses, or who within her own power, because it's the Devis, it's Ma Sati who does this herself. They choose to do it, or they manage to do it themselves. and that is frowned upon. And yet, when you compare it to the Japanese culture, where suicide is actually revered as being like the most auspicious, or the most dignified way in which you can die, and there men and women would commit seppuku, it was called, and there, because it was both genders doing it, it was seen, on a pedestal as the best way to choose to go. Yet because sati has been linked to women only, it's been frowned upon. But that's because people are jumping on this Western feminist bandwagon. But in the end, if a woman chooses to be empowered to go in that way to protect her dignity, then why should that be a shameful act? As I said, it's just because it's associated with it just being women doing this. And so the feminist bandwagon latch upon it and use it as a way to make Hinduism look bad. Whereas I said, the Japanese culture, it's seen the best thing to do in ancient times.
Yeah. Okay. विराज जी, इसमें एक चीज जो मैं ऐड कर सकता हूँ, what happened was when I was getting married, that time there are these sacred vows which have to be taken. There are 7 vows which have to be taken. Now, generally, what happens is the bride and bridegroom are not focusing on that; they are just focusing on the merriment. But I started asking the pandit who was doing the rituals for us. I started asking him that keep on explaining each and every vow to me. Now, there are 2 things very interesting that he said. One was that you are taking a pledge that from today onwards, since she is your wife, whatever punya karma you are going to do, she will get 50% of the benefit of that. And any paap that you will do, you will get 100% suffering for that, and she will not get any part of the paap that you are going to do. And the second part was that if she commits a paap, I will be suffering 50% for that. And if she is committing a punya, that is 100% for her credit. So it is entirely one-sided. Now, if somehow we had, as we have a radical feminist movement, if we had a radical masculine movement, they would have latched onto it. That what nonsense is this? So that is to tell you that don't fall for this trap. Man and woman or male and female are not equal. They are not at all equal. They are different and they are complementary. They are not equal. You have to bear this in mind. And that is what Sanatana Dharma is all about. Shiv and Shakti, they are 2 different aspects. They are not equal. They are not identical. Look at the nature, look at the biology of the 2, that is not even same. So why would you ask anybody to say that they should be treated 100% equally as if they are robots? Don't fall into these traps. That is what I would suggest. I can give you hundreds of such examples. I mean, the most despised scripture in the Sanatana tradition is Manusmriti. And what does it say? Yatra narestu pujyante ramante tatra devta. Which means that the household where women are revered, devtas live in those households. Now, somebody might ask a question, why is it that why should women only be worshipped? Why is it not Purush puja should be done over there? So it will be an endless quarrel. There was somebody, I think, day before yesterday, Shankar Sharanji was in our discussion, and he gave a very sound advice that don't fall into these traps. Don't play by their rules, play by your own rules. Look at Sanatana Dharma. You should understand what it is saying. It is saying that 2 are complementary, they're not equal. In fact, Nari is revered because she has one additional power which no male has had. She has the creation of progeny. She has the power to procreate, which a male does not have. So going by those standards, going by those aspects, the feminine is at a higher pedestal as compared to the masculine. I think that should help you somehow in such situations. Okay, moving on to the next question. Pragyanam Brahm, help us understand this Mahavakya. Melissa ji, I don't think you've ever read about this. And Kalidasi ji, I think you've not read. दिव्यांश जी, पहली चीज़, ये महावाक्य नहीं है। पहले आपको महावाक्य समझना पड़ेगा कि महावाक्य किसे कहते हैं। और इस पे हम कभी महावाक्यों पे हम किसी दिन डिस्कशन रखेंगे, शायद जनवरी में रखेंगे, तो अभी आप अपना क्वेश्चन वहाँ के लिए रखिए, मैं उसमें इसका आंसर आपको देने की ट्राई करूँगा। हमारे जो गेस्ट हैं, आप उनसे क्वेश्चंस पूछिए। The devil. Hinduism only culture where all form of genders and life are equally worshipped, be it Ma Durga, Ardhanarishwar, Shiva or Hanumanji, yet feminist discriminate. Absolutely, that is exactly the point. दोनों देवियों से, you can take up the question or statement if you would like to comment on it.
I would just comment that there are so many examples where the role of the female, of the Devis is so, and of women generally throughout history in India has been so crucial to the prosperity, the survival of India. When for example, if you look at the Mahabharata, the roles that Draupadi, that Gandhari, that Kuntiji, they played are so key in helping the Pandavas to take up arms, to have the confidence to fight to protect Dharma. So there is such a, as you mentioned earlier, Neerajji, there's this complementarity between the men and the women. The women are there to help the men to see the righteous path in many ways, many times. And at times, actually, the women are the people or the ones to restore Dharma. When you look at Ma Durga with Mahishasura, it's because he underestimates the power of women. And then Ma Durga, she is there to restore Dharma. So there is this beautiful balance between men and women restoring Dharma throughout the Shastras, throughout India's history. And it's so different in the Abrahamic religions, because men, I think where it stems from is because the Abrahamic religions, they feed on conversions, they feed on conquering. They're very sort of testosterone driven attributes and pursuits, aren't they? So when women are being so suppressed, they're not available to help men to see the righteous path or to question, are you sure you want to go and kill that person or convert that person under torture? Because in many ways, women, they have a higher level of sensitivity than men. As you just mentioned, Neerajji, that there are times where the Nari is seen as superior to men. So when the Abrahamic faiths are suppressing the women, they're suppressing that ability or that mechanism for righteousness and for Dharma to be protected and for adharma to be defeated. And so the men, in their very conquering and testosterone driven pursuit, they go out conquering and destroying and absolutely raping the whole world. And when we look at the state of the world today, that is a consequence of many women being suppressed because they were not then available to help temper men as they went out conquering and raping and pillaging in many cultures, but and particularly within the Abrahamic faiths.
Yeah, absolutely. Kalidasi ji?
Yes, this is a very nice question. Thai Devil G has asked. Sanatan Dharma, first of all, please don't use Hinduism. I mean, like Sanatan Dharma would be nice and pleasing to hear. So Sanatan Dharma actually talks about the physical and the non-physical as well. So in physical, you have got these many characteristics. Life has evolved in many different ways, different species, and that is what Dharma teaches, to coexist in harmony, despite of any gender, despite of any caste, color, or whatsoever. I mean, like the basic principle of Dharma is to coexist and live in harmony. And on the contrary, it is only through Dharma that you can understand that soul is genderless, soul is beyond the physical. So if you see, it is only through Dharma that you can be at a base level and then you can gradually evolve and ascend. So these kind of paths and these kind of knowledge, the sacred knowledge towards ascension and liberation, is not with any other man-made religion. So certainly Sanatan Dharma is the best way of living. It's a mindful approach to life. And yes, I feel very proud of it. And I'm sure all of, I mean, like my Sanatani brothers and sisters must be very proud of it as well. And yes, there is a lot of things to learn from Ma Durga. If you have mentioned the names, Ardhanarishwar Shiva, Hanumanji, all of these deities, there is a huge array of things that one can learn from, rather than just having the picture on the wall and not connecting or going deeper into understanding these energies. So I think we are a very evolved species or a race in the scientific paradigm kind of a world that we are living in. So until unless there is no scientific validation, we don't believe it. If I mean, we cannot touch it, we don't believe that something might be there. And on the contrary, science even says that our eyes only see a percentage of lights. So science itself is actually in delusion. And to help mankind come out of that delusion, Sanatana has got various folds, various schools of thoughts, philosophies, and there is quite a lot of things. As the other day I was discussing with Melissa ji, and the word that she used was phenomenal. She said Sanatan Dharma is science plus 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 plus. And I mean, like, that is something, I mean, very beautiful and very easy for a person, a lay person, I mean, a layman to understand. I mean, like, how expansive and how evolved Sanatan is. Because we see, I mean, we are very much trapped, on the basis of science. If I talk to a child quickly asks me that I don't see it, I don't hear it, so how do I believe you? That is how we had been. But when it comes to Sanatan, we experience, and through experience only we ascend. So yes, I'm proud of it. And they will go ahead.
जी जी Viral Patel ji, thank you Neeraj ji, Lakshmi, Kali ji, welcome ji. Glad that you are satisfied. Or it's been more than 1.5 hours. It was lovely talking to two deities on either of my side, and I'm sure the audience enjoyed interacting with you. And with that note, yes, before we wind up, I think we should take the advice, the suggestion given by Melissa ji very, very seriously. And jokes apart, it's a very serious issue which we are staring right in the face. And if we do not get our act together very quickly, it might be too late for us. So, um, on behalf of all my audience, I thank both of you from the core of my heart. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. And Bharat Mata ki Jai, Vande Mataram.
Jai Kali, Bharat Mata ki Jai.